Welcome to the Cyber Health Podcast. I'm Stephen Perano, your host, and I designed this podcast to give people in the medical industry, in the technology space, an opportunity to share their story, share their journey, but ultimately we want to inspire people. I'm excited to introduce my guest. It's John Riley III. John serves as the Vice President of Business Services at AVA Intelligence, where he leverages an extensive professional career spanning over 23 years within the software applications industry. John proudly brings to the table his experience as a distinguished U.S. Marine War veteran. John, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Stephen.
You were in the Marines.
Yes.
Desert Storm.
Correct.
Right? Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah. Looking back, and it's kind of like realizing, you're 19, 20 years old and you're a kid, and then now I get to look back over 20, 30 years, and it's like, wow, it was an experience that, it sticks with you your whole life, right? One, I'd always wanted to be a Marine since I was probably in fourth grade.
Wow.
So when I left for the Marines, I left 2 days after I graduated high school.
Nice.
Went to boot camp at Parris Island, South Carolina, and then over to Desert Shield, Desert Storm by the end of that year. So, and then into war. So you could take that experience and then go through the war. My unit was the first ones through the minefield in the morning. Wow. So got to see some very interesting things. But after the war, I still had, 3 years left on my contract. So got to go travel the world, different areas, and kind of leverage that experience when I got out in the business world, right? Because the things you learn about, mental toughness, fortitude, play a big part in any job you're in, even corporate America when I work for companies like Oracle and SAP, but also from a leadership standpoint, right? When you're working with different leaders and how to navigate that and how you want to be a leader, depending on if you're leading people. So as I kind of get into different things in technology, and the funny thing is, I never thought I was going to be in technology. I thought I was going to be a cop when I got out. I was going to be in a SWAT team or something like that.
Yeah.
I grew up in New York, and at the time when I got out, there was a waiting list for the police department. And as time went on, working consulting services for Oracle, and then same thing for SAP, and education services, and what they call user adoption, right? User adoption of new technology that's coming out. I got into that and got into more consulting with different companies, but really started getting into innovative tech around 2016, 2017, when I started learning about blockchain. And blockchain was kind of like, wow, this is something different. And I think everybody was hyped up around the crypto side at the time. But I was really interested in the enterprise blockchain side because I saw the value for businesses. The challenge is 2017, 2018, that's really that early adoption phase, right? When people are still learning about it and we're saying, oh, cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. And I was like, no, the enterprise block, the underlying technology is where businesses are going to be able to leverage something that's really going to change the dynamic of how they're doing businesses, from cross-border transfers to having a very secure audit trail of all their transactions where somebody can come in and cook the books. So as I got into that, met up with some business partners, and then started getting into AI and things like AI and digital twins. I like this space. I'm always having to learn something new. Cybersecurity at the time was kind of on my radar at the time, but it really wasn't the focus because I was really wrapped up in all this innovative tech. But understanding digital transformation, cybersecurity needs to be a part of that conversation from day one. And as you look at cybersecurity and where it's at now, it's still, for a lot of people, especially executives and C-suite, it's still that early thing of why do we need to focus on it? And we're probably going to talk about this a little bit later. But understanding of, no, if you don't understand that, here's where you need to budget your money, because the breaches that are coming are twofold or almost 5-10x of what they were just 3 years ago. And that's the scary thing. The scary thing is how fast the breaches are. AI's put these threat actors on steroids of how they can do things, and also with the ransomware. And organizations of what they're paying out, because data is king. Right? Data is king to everyone, every industry. You look at Meta, you look at everybody else, they have their hands on this data, but organizations know how important this data is, and so do these threat actors. So looking at things of, once we have your data, we own you.
Right.
And that's kind of like when I looked at my journey of where I started in technology and how it got into cybersecurity, it all is intertwined, all of it. So telling that to others that are trying to figure out what should my threat, what should my practice be around cybersecurity? It's more of this awareness that we're talking about today of how do you make your people, your organization aware? How do you make them cyber resilient of practicing certain things, of penetration testing, of knowing your people not to open emails? Because at the end of the day, the human factor is the easiest way for someone to get into an organization.
And that's funny you say that, because like on my list is cybersecurity awareness, and I wanted to touch on that. We can probably go ahead and
Sure.
go into that, because that it seems so elementary, but it is not in a large scale.
No, not at all. And I think that's always should be the starting point. And I look at it from the standpoint of and things I've done in executive briefings, it's the C-suite that needs to understand it the easiest way, right? We know when people think about cybersecurity, think about from a technical standpoint. Oh yeah, I got my CISO or my Chief Information Security Officer, they're going to handle everything, or the people under them are going to handle everything. You're like, no. From an executive, you need to understand, where is this affecting you and your organization, right? There are new laws being passed out from the SEC on holding CEOs accountable for data breaches. So because of that, it's like, this is no longer, hey, I'm going to pass this off. It's like, if you're not a part of what they call your incident response plan of how do we respond to an attack from an executive standpoint, you are now held accountable for that. There's a company called SolarWinds that are out there, and a lot of people know about it, is they had a data breach over 3 years ago, but they tried to cover it up. And now the CEO, the CFO, and the CISO are being brought up on charges and could get jail time for it.
Wow.
And this is kind of the impact of showing you this is how important it's becoming now. And if you're part of critical infrastructure organizations, it's even more important. So how do you do that? You have to do the high-level education for the senior leadership going, here's what's going on in your industry. Here are the organizations that have recently been attacked that are now your threat. And it's never about, oh, if we get attacked. It's always going to be when we get attacked. How are you preparing for that? And really the cyber awareness training does a lot of that.
So that changes the game altogether when they have executives and C-suites being held responsible.
Yes.
That is something that has never been done before, right?
No.
And that has been in effect this year, or that was
in the past year, really. It's become more stringent on it. And, the state of Florida is putting in strong stringencies of you need to report it within a couple of days. Now they're saying within hours.
Wow.
And that's really tightening the screws on accountability, really, of making the FBI aware, making the state and local authorities aware of it, and being able to report that. But also, if you don't have what they call your incident response plan in place of, do I have my letters ready for the board for a public company? Do I have my letters for my lawyer? Do I have my press release ready? It's all these things being prepared, because once an attack hits, you're not thinking straightly. You're like, what'd they get? What's the data? I mean, who do I need to contact? So if you're not really preparing for that ahead of time, right, there's a challenge for a lot of executives, where the biggest issue comes around with cyber awareness is how do I prepare ahead of time? And it's really with the awareness and the training preparing you for it, like muscle memory, right? So being in the Marines, everything was a train for muscle memory. So it's just a reaction of cyber attack. You're not freaking out like somebody that's running around on fire. Right. It's like, people on fire, you're like, hey, stop, drop, and roll.
Right.
But when you're on fire, you see people and mind's not prepared because they haven't trained of, oh, I just need to stop, drop, and roll, and somebody's going to help me and put my fire out. Even with a cyber attack, it's like, oh my God, who do we talk to? Who knows what? And you can't slow it down because you haven't been preparing yourself throughout the year of, okay, if the attack hits, it's no longer like what they get. It's like, okay, what do we put in place? How much did they get? What do we stop? Where's our backup, right? Where else can we do this? Did an executive briefing with a local TV station that's in Florida, and the CEO was in the room along with the CFO and the CISO. And as we're talking through it, we're kind of really making him aware of what's going on in the industry. By the time we got done, he's like, okay, I see it now. I need to have 60 laptops in a locker just with login credentials for people to take. If we get attacked, they can just take their laptops, have a new laptop, and go work somewhere. He goes, and I want to have my letters ready for the board, for the press, for my lawyers, and really, and it was kind of like, all right, he gets it. He knows that now, if I'm not prepared, and people are going to look at me as the leader and the executive of what's our direction,
right,
and I'm not prepared to answer that question, it just causes that ripple effect of anxiety and like, what are we doing? Are my people getting paid, right? You think about HR and everything like that, you're like, okay, do I have the contingency plan in place for that? They can still access their systems, so I can still pay my people in case of an emergency. So when we look at the cyber awareness, it's really always coming down to the leadership first, preparing them early on in the season of, okay, what do we budget? And that's what the question always comes down to. Why do I need to put so much money aside for cybersecurity? Well, IBM in their report last year talking about data breaches, an average cost of a data breach is $4.5 million.
Wow.
And I'm telling executives well, you can pay $4.5 million, or you can start by budgeting $200,000 to $300,000 a year on cyber awareness training, software for the company, whether you're working with what they call managed service providers, working with them as well. But that's just the starting point, because as the way things are going, that budget for cybersecurity is going to need to grow as fast as it's moving for data breaches now.
And the flip side of that with the executives, do you still find in your experience or know people that are still, they just have that disbelief, like, oh, not me, not my organization.
Yeah, that's...
or we're too small.
Yeah.
We're too small. We're not going to get hit.
The smaller companies are the ones that should be paying to it the most, right? These medium-sized companies, because they can't handle a $4.5 million data breach. Right? I mean, that puts them out of business.
Right.
But then you have executive or leaders that go with that old school mentality of, all right, well, yeah, we got a breach. That's fine. Let's just keep going. That's the hard thing. It's a mindset, right? It's a mindset for people going, this is a different dynamic. It's a different environment. And even some organizations I've seen where they've been breached 2-3 times still don't go with, okay, yeah, let's just keep moving along as business as usual. A lot of these organization executives, this reputational damage they're doing to themselves. You're responsible for keeping the company afloat, and you're still going with this same mentality of, okay, yeah, well, I'm going to let my CISO take care of this. I don't need to be involved. And that's the hardest thing, is changing a mindset that's been in place for years, where people are now, because technology is moving so fast, are not keeping up with it. And it's even for us in the industry, it's hard for us to keep with it. Every day when I see notices of breaches, my mind's blown like, holy cow. Like, this is moving faster than ever before. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, the reports was in 2020, September 23 last year, there are more ransomware attacks of all of 2022 by September of 2023 last year.
Damn.
And 2024 is already going to be on pace to beat that just from what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most recent, even though they claim it wasn't a, what do you think about AT&T? They said it wasn't a breach. They said it was a software update. That little clip I saw, I'm thinking, well, why would the FBI and all these other people get involved if it was a software update mishap?
And they have to, because with critical infrastructure, that's part of it, right? They have to look at, because that's an easy way to cause chaos. When you start cutting down communications to people, that causes panic. Like, what's going on? So the FBI definitely has to jump in at that point going, was this a data breach? Was this a software update that we weren't aware of and there was a glitch in the system? That's fine. That's where these large organizations out there, like especially healthcare, need to be prepared for that. They need to be prepared for what's going on. I mean, there's a lot going on in healthcare with cyber breaches in there. They're being attacked twofold compared to anybody else in the critical infrastructure right now.
Wow. And why do you think that is?
Because they know you can cause a lot of chaos with healthcare, and they're easy, and they're old school in how fast they adopt innovative technology. That's the challenge, right? And even the executives. I remember even 2019, 2020, I was talking about blockchain with healthcare organizations. And I remember talking to the executives there, and they're like, oh, yeah, this is great. Oh, yeah, managed provider services. And just...
Wow.
Right? And I was talking about it at a high level of, hey, here's the thing. Why don't you secure these things? Your medical records, all these things like that. And, oh, yeah, that's great. And it's just that old school mindset of thinking of, we've always done it this way. And I've been consulting for a while. And you always hear that answer, well, why do you do it this way? Oh, we've always done it this way. And it's getting them away, well, you've always done it this way, but you need to start looking at what's coming up, right? You need to start looking at it almost from a visionary standpoint of, hey, in 5 years, are we prepared for this?
Right.
Are we preparing for this, what they call this digital transformation of innovative technology and bringing it on board? And what's it going to take to do that, right? What am I not paying attention of the value of certain technologies that can make me be more efficient or secure my infrastructure better? How am I doing these things? But when you're talking to people that have been in there for a while and they've always done it that way, and if the messaging isn't being conveyed clearly to them by their technical teams, there's the challenge, right? Because then once, and I've been in board meetings, and once you start talking very technical with executives, they get glassy-eyed, they're looking at the phone, they're writing down notes, you're like this, like, and then like you're kind of just shaking their head, and you know you've lost them.
Wow.
When you start talking about the financial impact of how it's affecting them, and here's where it is, here's where you're going to be losing money if this happens. Usually that's when they start paying attention and going, okay, but the messaging has to be easy enough to digest of, here's how you can get started, right? It doesn't have to be frying the ocean, but how do we start you somewhere where you start seeing the value in some of this technology that can prepare you for the things that are coming on. So you start onboarding the right innovative tech that can be implemented in a way that your organization can start using it.
Yeah, I want to go back to when you said about communications, right? So let's say you lose communications. You walk away and you lose communications. And a lot of companies are not prepared even for that simple fact when they lose communication. The cell towers go out. So what are some things you would suggest in your expertise for companies to be thinking about?
What's our contingency plan of how are we communicating with our teams, right? If we can't do internet, we can't do these things. Is it satellite phones? Is it, I don't know, you can get to walkie-talkies if you need to, right? Depending on what you're doing, your industry is. But you have to start figuring out a way of how we communicate if cell phone towers go down, phone lines go down. How are we doing this? Is it somebody running out in a car delivering a message? Somebody's joking around, it's like, no, is it carrier pigeons? Right. But when you look at worst case scenario, you have to almost think in that ramification, because it could be that serious. And if you're not thinking from doomsday sometimes, and you don't want to put fear in people when you say that, but think of a doomsday scenario, and you're like, that's how you should think in some of these situations, because as technology and AI and everything speeds up, these are the things that are coming, right? And we're not even talking about the age of quantum, right? Quantum computing.
Yeah,
and that's going to add, and that's literally right around the corner. That's going to add a whole other dynamic. People are just having a hard time adopting and accepting AI at this point. You throw quantum computing in there, and it's going to be your head spinning. Like, what can you do now? How fast can that move? Right. Oh, you can really hack that already and you're like, oh my God, we weren't even prepared for this. And that's the mindset of you're starting about cyber awareness, and it starts with those little nuggets there of how do you make them aware of, we're talking about AI now, 2-3 years, and some people are talking about quantum now. We're talking about quantum computing. And you're going, oh, okay, should I be learning about that now? Should I just be tipping my toe in the water of what can it do? What will it impact? Right. So as we look at these conversations that are coming up in the organizations and just in the community of how do we make people aware of this in a way that doesn't scare them, but going, hey, start preparing in a way. Small little things, small little steps. Doesn't have to be like, hey, I need to digest it all right now. But if it moves faster than you think it is and the way technology is, don't be surprised if it's here faster than we thought it would be.
That's true. And then, of course, the other element to it, you hear people ask, well, what if the power goes out and we have no power? How effective will our satellites be in our alternative communication sources? You know, what is the contingent for that when there's no power? Right. That's a hard question. Right.
It's a hard question. I mean, outside of preparing and having your generators ready, right, or something like that, right? It's those things, and it's. Well, a lot of hospitals do it. A lot of smaller companies and other infrastructures have these backup generators. But you think about mid-sized companies, right? A lot of them can't invest in that, or ones that can run their company. It's going, okay, how can we do this? But it's thinking that far ahead. You think about we're in South Florida, hurricanes. Right. So for us down here, thinking about generators and stuff like that, a lot of people are kind of prepared for that. But you look at other areas in your central, parts of the U.S., generators maybe not be always being thought of unless for it's wintertime and power goes out or ice storms. But it's thinking of, okay, how can we have power? How can we can still move forward and communicate with people? And it's those basic things, right? It's not even saying, hey, you need to be thinking about everything, but the basic things of how will we still keep business moving forward? Right? How will supply chain keep moving forward if power goes down, if we can't do this? Are we going to do it in an analog type of way, right? It's back to paper.
Paper.
It's like, do we have that kind of thinking or thought process in line of, if it went down, can we do this all on paper the old-fashioned way if we had to,
Sure.
right? Just to keep the wheels moving until we can get things up and running again.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, it have to be that basic, but it could, right?
Yeah.
It could get to that. Well, I want to talk to you a little bit about the consulting.
Sure.
Right? You have your own consulting company.
Yes.
Right? Let's talk a little about that, how that started and what you're doing with that.
Yeah, I mean, for us, the consulting, and I started my own. It was around blockchain, and I got my partners, and it's really that advising, right? And it's kind of, and it really it's a lot of advising. It's really education. Some people know what they want to do. Some people don't. Saying, "Hey, I want to implement this type of technology. I want this software," and then it's coming into this digital transformation conversation of, okay, where do you want to start? What problem are you trying to solve? And that's always the biggest thing with any technology, even with AI. When people go, I like to have AI, we're like, okay, that's great, but what's your use case, right? Where are you fitting it that it's going to give you efficiency, insight into things that you haven't seen? You want to work with your data. What are you looking to do with that, right? And the consulting allows us to have those deeper conversations of, hey, just don't implement this for the case of implementing it. We support you on this, right? Or you're buying this technology. Let's tell you the right roadmap to build it out on. Let's do this in a phased approach, right? Let's not just go, hey, let's do everything and then try to get every department in the organization doing it at the same time. No. Build one, show the success in this one area. Look how more efficient they are. Look how they're doing business better. Now let's roll this out in different ways. And with consulting, it's really kind of taking your expertise to them and saying, hey, here's how we've done it here, or this is how this organization did it. You might want to take some nuggets from it and take these ideas and saying, how can we do this here? And it's also giving the hard questions like, no, you don't want to do this.
Right.
And sometimes people don't want to hear that. Like, no, I really like, no, you don't want to do that. And here's why. Here's the issue that you're going to come across, right?
Sure.
The challenge is also a lot of people, they want to do this on, a shoestring budget. And you're like, oh, we want this for this much. And you're like, listen, the amount of time and what you're buying, you're like, you can go the cheap route, but it might take you longer because then it's like, oh, we have to come back in and do this again. I wasn't expecting this. And you're like, no, here's realistically how you can do it. Sometimes paying for quality is what needs to be done. For the ones that I've seen and work with organizations and as technology goes, they're like, oh, I only want to pay this much. You're like, okay, you can do that, but you're not going to get us for that because that's not what it takes. And this is the man hour, and this is the expertise you're going to need to get this off the ground. If somebody can come in saying, oh, we can do this, everything for this, we're like, you go ahead, try that. And a year later, you're asking, like, oh, we need to rip it out and redo it because it wasn't done the way we done. And I've seen that consistently throughout my career of organizations that have tried that approach. So really, it's being very upfront, authentic about, hey, we're here to help you, right? We're not here to, we're here to make money at the same time, but it's not to say, hey, I want to come in and just see how long I can be in this implementation with you to see, okay, all these guys have a ton of money. It's like, no, we want you to be successful. Right. Because if you're successful, then you have your people buying into what you're doing for your organization. So if we can help you look good by making this decision of this technology, then we're doing our jobs the right way.
Oh, that's great. Well, great. Well, let's touch on blockchain for a little bit because people always say, well, blockchain, why is that important? How would you answer that?
I really look at it, it depends on what you're looking to do, right? If you're in a highly regulated area, blockchain is great because the transactional audit trail is huge for a lot of organizations, especially with finance. That's where finance started adopting it really early on. I remember when I got into it, JP Morgan started getting the blockchain very, very early because they started seeing the value of, wow, with tracking transactions. NASDAQ had been using it for a year at that point, 2018, and looking at, okay, we know numbers can't be fudged. People can't report numbers and then go back and change them, right? So you're looking at something that's an immutable ledger, really, in this easiest way to explain it, right? It's like tell people, it's just this really great ledger that everybody can share, has access to, but nobody can go in and manipulate. And if there's a change, right, on blockchain, it goes back to the original transaction, but it ties it to the updated change. So it's never a misconception of, are these numbers accurate? And you're like, okay, well, back here, and then they changed it here, but they link these things in the blockchain together, showing, hey, here was the original transaction entry, but here's the updated one, but it's tying it back to all this, the historical pattern of it. So, but also when you look at things like cross-border transfers, right? Before banking you take 2 weeks. You have to have an intermediary. So it's this cost-saving money of bringing in third parties, which has started cutting people out, which a lot of people weren't excited about.
Sure.
But it was shorting down that process of, hey, it's secure here. You're using blockchain. I'm going to transfer it to you over here. We verified this transaction happened on this day at this time to this person. So those things of shortening cycles of business and transactions. But really, I always going back to the simplest thing is this historical audit trail that everybody can have access to and see. Now you have these public blockchains and private blockchains that where it's just inside the organization, not everybody can see it. Public ones like a Bitcoin platform where everybody sees all these transactions out there and can see, okay, who did what on what day and certain things like that. So really, it's providing businesses this secure accuracy, but insight in their organizations that they have this much history that they'll never have to worry. And I think it was back in the day with the company called Enron, which kind of brought this all on board with Sarbanes-Oxley. It was coming very big of, hey, you have these requirements and these regulations around this. But you have this technology that really allows that to happen in a way that organizations can now be held accountable. Or someone particularly can point the finger at someone like, you put this in here, it wasn't incorrect. We have a history of it, right? Who are we putting this finger back to?
Right.
So blockchain has grown exponentially, and it's still, I think it's still new to a lot of people. And I call it, the early adopter part of it of, hey, if I'm into it and people are like, oh, why blockchain? It's like, oh, well, here it is. Here's the use cases from healthcare to finance to supply chain, all these things that are out there where it provides this value. But really, it's kind of, the power to people to be able to globally do their own transactions. I mean, you have people in organizations where South America or in Africa where now they can not worry about somebody going into a bank and taking their funds. They can have it all on their phone because of cryptocurrency, right? They have this power now to like, hey, I can do a transaction with John and we can, hey, I want to buy, I need a loan. Okay, not a problem. I'll send you, transfer this money to you. We have a record of it. That's our contract between me and us. I'm not worried about a dictatorship going on. I'm like, hey, we're going to the bank and we're taking all your money out of there, right? Or even land rights and putting real estate land rights on a blockchain where a government can't come in and like, well, this isn't your land. Like, yes, it is. Here it is. It's in this blockchain. And it's showing I own the rights to this land. Here's the deed. Here's the parameters around it. So it really kind of gave power to more people that didn't have it before. And that's what I loved about it. I think when I first got into it is like, wow, this is going to change the world from the aspect of people being able to own access to funds they weren't available to, but also an accountability of things they own that can't be taken by people that have more power than them.
That's true. And how does an AI play a role in that? Does that expedite things even more?
AI, I mean, it kind of does a lot of more automation around it, right? AI really opens the door. I mean, ChatGPT kind of, just really opened people's eyes to like, wow, generative AI is just, and it's still new for a lot of people as they get into it, like generating a response just to questions or talking to something just as we're having a conversation right now, asking a question of, I need this, give me this, give me a business plan, and I want it for this type of company that does this type of product. And boom, what normally takes people weeks or even a month, right? Think about it from a time aspect of going through it. Now, instantly, you can snap your finger and you have an idea going, wow, I wasn't thinking about this, right? And really, that's the power. And it's people, I've done panels and people are like, oh, AI, we're scared, it's taking over the world and I'm scared of it. And you're like, no, it's once you start doing a basic education on it, like, here's the value of it, right? And now once people know this, AI has been around for a while. It's not like it's something new in the 1950s. But now where it's easy, accessible to people, everyone, now you're like, oh, wow, I can do these sort of things. Or entrepreneurs, oh, I can start this business where I'm getting ideas that I wasn't thinking about. Or, hey, I can get insight into a way of presenting my organization or a way of giving a presentation of, okay, how do I do this? Or, hey, what's the expert I need to talk about there? Like, no, I'm a leader. I do these things here. Give me ideas that I need to do to help my people become more efficient in these areas. Okay. Well, before it's research and it's time, and time is more valuable to anybody out there, right? Everyone has, and executives especially, right? Their time is valuable. to do that and give people this power that wasn't there before with AI, it allows you to bring in newer ideas, more innovation, and more thought process around of, hey, how can we do things better? Right? Where can I get this insight?
Right.
And these what they call these large language models that are tied to like ChatGPT opens it up. I mean, all right, take this document, translate it into Portuguese.
Right.
Translate this into German, right? Before, I mean, yeah, you have Google Translate, stuff like that. But you're able to take your own document and going, I need a response because I'm working with an international company. Translate this into Japanese for me and send this proposal over. Okay. Where you got to get a translator, you got to do this, you got to verify is the language correct. It's just opened the doors for even companies and organizations to even go after more business that they couldn't before. And that's kind of where I love the power of AI, generative AI, where you're allowed to do these things that just as a person, you can generate these ideas or opportunities for yourself that weren't there less than a year ago. Right? Because when ChatGPT came out, I was like, whoa. And now what he can do is it's disrupting, right? It's disrupting the film industry.
Yeah.
I mean, when Sora came out, and I was like, oh, I just type in and say, make me a video of this car driving down the road, and you're like, whoa. Like, that's just mind-blowing. You're like, and that's just the starting point. It's going to get better and better and better. And you're like, people are happy with just draw me an image of this.
Right.
And it jumped from an image to a video within months.
Right.
You're like, I don't want an image. I want you to draw me a video of this.
Right.
Think about people that are doing marketing, stuff like that. I think, was it Tyler Perry, the filmmaker, had this $800 million production company he was going to do. And when Sora came out, when AI is like, he stopped it. He's like, this is changing the investment of what I was about to put into this, or this can do this. Like, okay, and it's cutting down costs. Yeah. When you think about that, what he would have put into that going, wow, I don't have to put that much money into this anymore. So really, AI is kind of doing these things where, and as we kind of look at cybersecurity, it's been good and bad on both sides of that, right? From the good side of threat actors being able to hack and not even be technical. Right. Not even be technical anymore. Right? Get an idea from generative AI or ChatGPT of, give me an idea for malware attack on this type of organization. Boom. Where now organizations with AI and some of these threat actors out there, it's hacking as a service, right? Malware as a service. Where, okay, here it is. Give me a cut of your proceeds when you do it. I mean, companies, as a state-sponsored threat actors like Lockbit and Black Cat that are out there, where these from Russia, where they have these affiliates where they're getting money, they're just giving out there and they're getting money from them, and that's a scary thing.
Very scary,
right? And that's what it's turned into, because people say it's that easy. Cool, I'll go the hard route, right? I won't go the hard route. It's like, hey, let me just take this, boom, I'm going to make a couple million off of this, and I only give a percentage of it. I mean, that's the biggest thing. I mean, and healthcare is getting hammered now when it comes to it.
Yeah, healthcare is nonstop. I mean, they had a breach, a couple hospitals in the United States just last month. I can't recall the names of I'd probably rather not say their names to save their face. Yeah. But yeah, so on the negative aspect of AI, it's becoming a nuisance, right, and at rapid speed. And then, of course, as you mentioned earlier, with quantum computing, I already know I'll have to have you come back at some point to talk more about. I want to get more deep into security threat actors and data breaches. But I wanted to make sure I introduce who you were, what was going on. So now, just on a personal level, I like to always end my podcast with just questions, just kind of how you think, your mindset, right? So, for example, what is one of the best advice you ever been given in your career?
One of the best advice I've been given. And, I've gotten a lot of advice over the years.
I'm sure, right?
I've gotten a lot of advice over the years. And some of it's good, some of it's not. I always say, you try to get your nuggets from where you can, right? From everybody. Everybody's got different insight in it. And it's really I remember I was talking to a guy, it's being authentic as possible, right? Just that's the biggest thing, because once you're authentic, people feel it, right? It's not fake. And we live in a world where with social media and people want to be famous or anything like that. But when you're genuine about your passion of what you want to be about, you want to help people, you really don't have to promote it. People start to feel it when you're around them. And if you're willing to help and willing to give insight or saying, hey, or being honest, like, hey, you know what? That's my expertise. but let me connect you with somebody that is, right? That you're actually wanting to help. And it ties into building very strong relationships. And the stronger relationships, people get to start saying, hey, you actually do care about this, right?
Right.
And in some things, you're in a situation where you might not agree with it, but you're like, hey, I don't agree with it, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong, right? I still want to have a relationship with people that have different insights than me or have different visions that I might not align with, because I'm always learning something, right? So building these authentic relationships with people of, hey, how can I support you? I appreciate you even being a part of this podcast, right? For me, it's another avenue of building a relationship with someone. Like,
Yeah.
hey, this is great, right? If I can help out again in the future, don't hesitate to reach out. Or, hey, now I can promote people. Like, hey, check out cyber health, right?
Right.
These things like that is just relationship building that stems into a lot of different things and avenues for a lot of people.
Sure.
And those connections is kind of that ripple effect, right? It's
Right.
yep, this conversation turned into this, or this introduction turned into so-and-so meeting so-and-so, and so meeting so-and-so. And I've had people come like, hey, thank you for hooking up with so-and-so. And I vice versa, like, hey, I wasn't expecting to talk to this person, but you thought of me because you know I was interested in these things here.
Wow.
So how do you share this authentic, will to have strong relationships with others? And it's really just how you show up with it of, hey, what can I bring, right? And it's not like what's in it for me all the time. And a lot of people we come across is, oh, what can I get out of this? So, or what can I do? How's this going to help me? Or how are you helping my brand today?
Right.
It's that, right? It's for me. It's like, hey, if it's authentic, you don't even ever have to say that, right? Because it just comes across. It's not like, oh, this is going to help me in my approach, and people are going to see me. It's like, no, it's I'm helping somebody out that needs help and thought that I can provide value. That for me is the greatest thing, and I like that.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. And I'm sure people get a lot of value from this episode. A lot of students will watch this, right, that are in the Broward and South Florida community. And one question I get a lot, and they always ask me to ask my guest, is your opinion as far as technology is concerned. Today we mentioned AI, blockchain, quantum, right?
Quantum,
so you
yes.
have all these avenues of technology.
Yeah.
So the question is for a student that's just getting in the game and trying to figure it all out, what would you recommend for them there? Because they're overwhelmed. A lot of people come up to me and say, man, I'm overwhelmed. I have no idea. I want to focus here, but then I feel like it might be obsolete. So what do you say to that? Because you were there at one point, right, when you had to figure out.
Yeah, and it's funny because, like I said, I bring it up again. ChatGPT allows now these kids to kind of go out and ask those questions of what are technologies that are up and coming, but it's also, in the end of the day, it's finding your passion and what interests you. Right, because even in cybersecurity, there's a lot of different directions you can go in.
Right.
So it doesn't mean you should go in all of them. What do you have?
Right.
What's the strongest one that you have a connection or an insight or a passion around? Going, hey, that fits me, who I am as a person, or that generates my interest. Or hey, wow, I saw that AI is doing these things and these things here. That's where they should start looking, right? Because then you start thinking of ideas of, hey, maybe do I want to start a company, or do I want to work for an organization that uses AI for this? Right? Is it AI for, the environment? Is it AI for healthcare or a certain interest that they're interested in? It allows them to try to pick where this innovative technology is going that they have an interest in. Before, it was like, hey, you just get a job and learn about this, and that's where you got to get, and you're kind of stuck.
Right.
But when you're in it, and it's technology around a certain thing you're interested in, then it's different. And then you want to learn more. You get excited of, oh, I learned something new about this here, or hey, I have an idea how this can be used. I have a use case of where this can maybe solve a problem, right? So, and I love this younger generation because they want to help, right? They want to help, and whether it's humanity or it's environment or something like that, they have these different causes of what they're passionate about. But now if you can apply some AI or any other technology to those passions, now it's giving an opportunity to get into technology as something they're interested in around.
True.
There's a lot of ideas are coming up night and day of, oh, you can use AI for this, or you can use blockchain for this, or as you look at quantum coming down there, it's like even for the kids, tip your toe in it, going, wow, what is quantum going to bring? Like, where's it going to affect me? Because they're the future, and it's going to be impacting them as the next 5-10 years go by.
Right.
And the earlier they just start learning about it now, goes, all right, I'm not focused on this, but I believe I have some insight into, wow, here are the areas quantum's going to change things in our world or in my life or in my career. And if that's something I want to be into, maybe I do start learning about it now. Maybe I do start saying, hey, where is this going to go? And the great thing now is, because I'm not a super technical person, like you don't have to be very technical anymore. It's like just knowing where this technology is going to fit and solve issues allows you to just start gaining interest in it. And I partner with a lot of technical people that help me with the inside of it. I'm not a developer or full stack developer or anything like that, but knowing where it fits and how it can be done allows them to team up with people like, hey, I got this great idea, right? You're a developer, you've been in this space. How can we do something around this, right? It allows them to think differently than they were before.
Sure.
Or even if they're working for an organization that's doing certain things, they can start asking intelligent questions around it. Like, hey, are we doing things like this? Or could we be doing things with it over in these areas here? And it allows it to play around with it, the ideas of, all right, yeah, and a lot of people, oh, I'm scared to be technical. It's like, don't be scared to be technical.
Right.
It's like, and for a while, that was the mentality, and I was there as well, early on. But when blockchain came along and I started learning about business cases around it, I was like, wow, all right, I'm not the person to build this out. But if I can really understand the values of where this thing fits and where it's changing, there was my excitement. There was my passion. And a lot of kids today, if they're not technical, they don't want to be technical, they can still find their passion around it, saying, hey, they can solve these issues. Let me bring around the right team or my core of people that can help me solve this issue. And that's great. I mean, South Florida is one of the top for entrepreneurship now, right?
Right.
And a lot of talent that used to leave are now staying, which is a great thing, right?
Right. And we got a lot of people that came over since 2020.
Since 2020, right?
Yeah.
People are coming to South Florida now because of that. I mean, I'm part of organizations like South Florida Tech and Tech Hub, and I meet a lot of people in these organizations of small business owners, entrepreneurs, technology. That's the biggest thing of seeing it's no longer, hey, we're leaving. I mean, IBM created the first computer here in Boca, right?
Right.
I mean, think about that, right? In Boca, in South Florida. So it's always been a tech hub. But now it's this focus on, wow, everybody wants to come here. Silicon Valley organizations are coming here. I mean, businesses from New York. I mean, COVID helped a lot with that, right? But they're coming here going, okay, this we're innovating. I mean, Miami is this hub now of tech, and now all South Florida is really a hub of tech, right? Before it wasn't that way. And I remember being here, and I moved down here in 2015. It wasn't that. It was still early.
Yeah.
I mean, now from Treasure Coast all the way down to Miami, there are different pockets of technology and different organizations that you're like, wow, South Florida is just booming.
Right, it's great.
It's great.
Yeah,
it's great.
awesome.
It's great to see it. But a lot of kids that are living here or going to school here, no longer like, hey, I have to leave. I have to go leave to find a good job.
Right.
Now, a lot of those good paying jobs that they were leaving for are now here when they weren't here before. So they have opportunities on, okay, and then they're building a relationship and knowing the ecosystem even better because now they're getting out into space and meeting different people that are going like, okay, hey, wow, you don't have to leave. You're about to graduate high school. Oh, we have this job right here. And now we're starting some of these kids at $120,000, $130,000. You're like, holy cow. Right. Those jobs weren't there before.
No.
And now they're here,
crazy.
right? Because these companies from California and even some companies from Austin, Texas, because Austin's a huge tech hub. But, I mean, you see that going, oh, all right, there's opportunities here that weren't here before in the past 3 years. Now, lightning speed, boom. Wow, they're staying and people are coming here.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, big shout out to South Florida Tech Hub. I think it's Nikki Cabas.
Cabas, yeah.
I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong.
No,
yeah, that's an awesome organization.
Yeah, I've seen her grown that exponentially over the past 3 or 4 years, and she's taken it to a new level and really bringing in this tight community of people that were very siloed, right? I mean, she brought in these ideas of let's combine them, let's get people on board, let's do these different events that not just in Miami, but in Fort Lauderdale and West Palm and further up the coast of making people, hey, you're a part of this whole ecosystem. Right. And that's not an easy thing to do. No, and seeing it grow the way she's made it grow has been a great thing to see and be a part of.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. I mean, I've been able to go to the IT Expo. Yeah. This is my third time this year going, and I love it. Every time I go, you meet all kind of people and get exposed to technologies and of where technology is going and how the human aspect can affect that. And we don't want to lose the human aspect. And I don't think we will. I think, like you mentioned earlier, a lot of people are afraid of AI taking everyone's jobs. I mean, yes, of course, it might take certain jobs that I guess we're just growing obsolete because of technology. But you're still going to need the human aspect to some degree.
Yeah.
Or at least for now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there will be some jobs that AI takes over, but allows organizations to think of how can I use my other people and or cross train them into something different,
Right.
but that furthers their career than what they were doing. That's great. I mean, but the human touch is always going to be needed in jobs, right? So it's not necessarily going to take it away. It's more in the lines of you need that human insight, that negotiation in the head, not just black or white. You know,
Right.
it's more in the lines of where's this gray area that a human needs to bring this insight or passion or emotion or connection that an AI technology would not have.
Right.
Right. The scary thing is, I mean, just reading articles, even looking at AI in spaces, where AI was looking at, you know, in DoD of nuclear warfare as a way of solving a problem. And they're like, whoa,
Wow.
right? Because there's an AI component that they were able to detect or decipher Russian code of hackers through large language models and AI faster, right? Using large language models and AI. And that was huge in the cybersecurity space. And they're like, this is where it's going. But also seeing, hey, AI is looking at something a human wouldn't look at to solve a problem, right? So it's understanding the human aspect will always need to be there because even though it's a rational way of thinking for technology, from a user standpoint, it's like that's not rational, right? So we always need to have humans involved in that process of technology and not giving everything over to it. It's more on the lines of let's see where it can fit and be efficient, but you know, the human aspect and mindset and relationships and conversations need to dictate the final answer on these things. So, you know, like I said, the human connection and relationships are huge, and I think we're on the right path with it.
Yeah, I mean, this is one step, right? One of the many steps we can make. Well, final question for you, and this is for organizations. If somebody that has an organization is watching this and they're on the fence, let's say they're not privy to all the new technology and cybersecurity and how to protect their environment, what's something you can help them in their organization?
I say it's at the end of the day, right? it's the basics, right? And it's really cyber awareness, high level cyber education. This high level understanding of where do I start, what's important to me, especially for executives. What's important to you, what's going to be important to you, and what's coming, and how do you prepare for that? And I've seen it before. A lot of things that are always cut in a budget are education, right?
Yeah.
They'll cut that right away. Like they'll buy technology and be like, oh, we don't need the education. My people are smarter than the average bear. You're like, listen, like, education doesn't stop, and especially in organizations. That high-level education, preparing your people to get them comfortable using new technology, and that's what we call in user adoption. So if they're not comfortable with this new change, it comes through education of, like anything else, we're always uncomfortable till we learn something about it. And I was teaching my son how to drive a car the other day. Right?
That's an experience.
And he's uncomfortable because it's something he's never done.
Sure.
As he's younger, he'd sit on my lap, I let him steer the wheel.
Right.
But the first time you're doing it, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, and it's scary.
Right.
But once you've done it, you're learning what to do. Okay, the left signal's on the right hand. Same thing with technology. You're uncomfortable until you start learning a little bit about it. Then you start going, oh, okay, that's what it's done. Oh, I didn't know that, right? And it's just like when we go to school, when you're uncomfortable learning something new. We always are. Because it's an uncomfortable feeling. It's like, I want to know. But, somebody's got to teach you first. Somebody's got to show you, here are the things you should be focused on. Then you're like, okay, now I feel more comfortable when somebody brings up generative AI, large language models, because I know just enough to be dangerous going, okay, I know where that's at. I know what they mean when they're talking about those things. Now I'm starting to learn where it fits. If it's a basic education, I would say always starting there or asking the questions, right? There's a site out there called, there's an AI for that, right? It's even websites. It can show you all the platforms of AI that fit in different pockets of what you would need something for. Technology is moving so fast, but it allows me to have these high-level conversations with an executive or C-suite going, here are things that are coming, right? It's not to go down in a rabbit hole with them. But what happens is, and I tell them, once you start learning, you will go down in your own rabbit hole.
Right, that's true.
Because you're going to go, I want to know more. I want to know more.
Right.
And that's when it becomes exciting, right? When you figure out on your own, not something, oh, you need to go, and they're like, no. When you start going in your own rabbit hole trying to find the answers, then it's like, wow, I really want to know more about this. Or who can I talk to that's out there that can tell me more, right? And I can ask intelligent questions around, well, what does this play? Well, what's threat intelligence, what's incident response plans, you know, what's pen testing, you know, what's red team, blue team exercises. All these things and helping organizations just understand the basics, I think is the starting point, right?
How will somebody find you and contact you?
We get J. Riley at AVA, Intel.com. Okay. And then you can also connect me through LinkedIn and through that way as well.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, John, for your time.
Thank you. That was fun. Absolutely.
Stephen Pirano, the host of the Cyber Health Podcast. If you haven't already, please follow, like, and share this video. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Take care.